There we go.
Boom.
Well, welcome everyone with our flashy new smart intro. Really cool. Welcome everyone to Building Medieval 3 Sieges and Settlements, I think is what we titled it in the end.
That's right.
Thank you very much everyone who's tuned in, or everyone who's watching this after the fact. We have some really cool, interesting stuff to
Settlements
show.
and Walls.
It was Settlements and Walls, now it's
Settlements
Sieges
and Walls, now
it's-
Sieges and Settlements.
We've had a lot of
Yeah.
names.
Okay, I've lost track.
But yes, we're here to talk about all those kinds of things, right? We will, in fact, I can throw up a little bit of what we will be talking about. There we go, fancy swipe again. So we've got three kind of distinct bits today, and we have two esteemed guests who many of you will recognise from last time who will talk us through this. So firstly, we'll be talking about our vision. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that is more of a discussion. Right, so we'll be talking through that. Then we have a tools workshop where Life here has brought some videos to show along. That sounds a little bit like a show and tell, but
It is.
kind of is. And then we have some in-engine demonstrations, right, where we'll be booting up the game in-engine to show off some of the stuff.
That's right. Yeah, last time we showed campaign our campaign build, and we wanted to show our battle prototypes today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's sort of during the announce, we talked a lot about the game overall, of course, and it was maybe a little bit more campaign focused. Last stream, of course, campaign, so it was really overdue to really dig into battle a little bit. I know everyone's super eager probably to see in-engine stuff. Last time I got a message on my phone mid-stream from people in the developer team who said, show the footage, show the game, too much talking. But it's obviously important. Like we want to bring everyone on board, make sure that everyone's thoughts and feedback is even more relevant because it's sort of we had a chance to bring everyone on the journey and the line.
And we're not used to showing the game this early on. You're not used to seeing our games this early on, so I think it's very important for us to be able to set that context and talk about where we're coming from and why we're showing what we're showing.
Exactly. So I just wanted to make sure everyone at home, or if they're downstairs in the studio, knew what we were going to be running through today. But I also want I want to reintroduce you guys. So for people who missed the last one or caught it on a recap video, would you care to introduce yourself? So Life, you were here last time. You've got the name under you, I think. Creative. You had it somewhere. Creative director.
Yes. Hello everyone. I'm Life. I'm the creative director on Medieval 3.
And what is a creative director? Just for those who don't.
Well, ultimately, I'm responsible for, let's say, the overall experience for players, the gameplay, but also the artistic realization of it, and sort of trying to bring all the experts that we have for the different disciplines, art and design, and user interface and whatnot, try to align everyone and bring on the same journey.
Fantastic.
So a bit like with our fans here right now.
Exactly. And we also have the wonderful Pav.
Hello. Yes. So I'm Pavel. I'm the game director on the project. I'm ultimately responsible for the game and the team making it, ensuring that the team have everything they need to make the game. And ultimately, Life and I are the two devs that you're going to see mostly in the forums when you come talk to us, giving us your suggestions and we're the ones actively reading and engaging with the forums.
Exactly.
So do come tell us what you think.
And speaking of, we've got on screen now what Building Medieval 3 is, right? Because it was we spoke about it a bit last time, so we won't go over it too much, but it's an intentional title choice. We're not playing. We are here to co-create the game. Would you say?
Yeah, this is these are the opportunities for us to kind of show the progress we're making during pre-production, because we are in pre-production. The game becomes more and more playable as we head towards production and ultimately in production. So these building medieval streams are there for us to kind of show you the guts and all of the process and the builds at the varying stages as we build towards the production of the game.
Exactly.
I think last time we talked a lot about how, especially on the art side, things aren't final. I think that's sort of the underlying, I guess, catchphrase for building medieval streams is that nothing's final, essentially. Everything is work in progress. Some things are more finished than others. But it's ultimately about showing, as we're building this game, as we're developing the game very early in pre-production, everyone can jump on the ride and be part of it.
I think,
and over time, we will progress to playing, medieval and playing the game as the game.
I look forward to
together.
titling the stream that.
Yeah.
I think we last time must have been 50, 60 times during the stream we had to go, that's placeholder, that is placeholder.
It'll probably happen again.
You'll be hearing plenty of caveats, plenty of
Yeah.
disclaimers from us, because we will be showing the engine. But
You said Guts and All. I think this is a build that was kicked off yesterday, right? And we've got it here today.
This morning. This is a build from this morning. Yeah.
So it's just us kind of trying to show what we've got and have discussion about it. We last time we had a bunch of questions and we asked people those questions. You put out a recap blog, mentioning some of the things we learned about that. I think people can expect to see more of those questions this time, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, these, what we want to do with these streams is kind of put together some key questions that we can get feedback on. Obviously, outside of the questions, there's also the general feedback to what we're showing, and the topics that come up as a result of the streams that we're doing, that we're actively kind of listening and engaging with as well.
Yep.
So yes, absolutely, we will be. Just as before, we've got the forum set up with the questions as we ask them. We'll be reading through all of the feedback that we get, and again, summarizing it for the team.
Exactly. There's a link actually at the bottom of the screen where you can get involved. It is, I think, covered a little bit by Horseman, but it's link.totalwar.com/med3, and that will take you to the forums where either now or at the end of the stream, Steve will confirm at some point, all of the questions that we're asking here will be there for you guys to answer.
That's right.
So, is there anything else we want to say about this stream, or do we want to get going?
I think we get going. Yeah.
Awesome. So, the first topics we have are more discussion-y. We do have some art to show, which I think we've agreed I'll just kind of ambiently throw up at some point.
Yeah.
But the first part of the vision we wanted to talk about is battle.
Yes. So I think one element we talked a lot about in the team is sort of the idea of really honing in on what made Total War great, especially Total War, like historical Total War great in the first place. And that's really that simulation of a medieval battle or any historical setting, right? It's not necessarily about making a game with let's say, all the conventions of game design, but really about a simulation of what would an army between two epic armies, a battle between two epic armies look like, and then ultimately allowing you as a player, of course, to, let's say, choreograph your own Hollywood epic cinematic clash.
Yeah, and the challenge is often actually fighting against the gaminess and the contrivedness of a game experience, actually trying to get that evocative kind of recreation of the historical battles or that Hollywood experience.
Yeah, and I think that simulation approach is really important because that makes it feel real. That makes it feel like you're there. You're looking at your armies invading the eastern enemy finally, right? And I think last time on the campaign stream we talked a lot about the notion of window to the world, which is certainly a mantra or a pillar, how we call it. A mantra we always kind of come back as part of development, and battle, it's even more important. The comparison is always where's Wally, right? Like sort of that idea of opening up the history book and seeing that big vista of a battle, and you look around and you see all this lovely detail.
Where's Waldo for those that are not outside of England?
We don't know any other versions of Wally.
I think it's where's Walter in German.
Okay, where's Walter? There you go. It's having that is that cause and effect, which is not just from the kind of impact of entities or actions in battle, but also the impact of the connectedness of campaign to battle, seeing the features of the campaign in the battle. It's and it's also that kind of individual the individual soldiers are behaving in a way that gives you that essentially that window to the world that you can really immerse yourself in in the setting.
And a big part of the window to the world of the simulation is, of course, morale, and sort of we call it the psychology of battle. Like your soldiers aren't androids who are marching for you. They're real people, real fighting men and sometimes women who are on the battlefield. And I think really elevating the importance of morale is a key part of Medieval 3. If you've been part of the discussions in the forums, you would know that there was a really cool proposal by Invicta around unit cohesion, and cohesion is certainly something we talk a lot about, like where, you could have relatively high morale, like you're still uplifted, you believe in victory, but something else brings you in disarray and your organization, your discipline is weakened.
Like the isolation of entities from the rest, kind of impacting on that.
For example. So I think really almost like thinking of morale, not just this one bar that you care about, but really what are the facets of morale is a big part of how we approach battle as a whole.
There was something interesting you said yesterday as well about all of these elements being part of the whole, especially when it comes to things like unit matchups. So it isn't just as easy as Unit A counters Unit B, right?
Yeah, and absolutely, and the different kind of impacts of be it the terrain, the environment, the other kind of events within the battle that can impact on the effectiveness of a unit, the psychology of the unit essentially.
And yesterday we had a design discussion with the team where a great example came up around knights, right, and how knights in the medieval battlefields, they were essentially not really a unit you could counter. Like there isn't a unit that you have where you're like, oh yeah, these are anti-knight units. So you really have to think about, okay, how can I now apply almost like grand tactics to ultimately, let's say, engineer a situation over multiple decisions, perhaps using multiple units to bring these knights down.
Wear them down, utilizing ground types.
And that ties into the importance of fatigue. Maybe you can bring in almost multiple waves of poor peasants that ultimately whittle down the prowess of these knights, and then you lure them into difficult terrain, like so many historical examples. That would be a great sort of experience.
I know you've looked at the TV. I don't know why the screenshot's up on the TV. It worked 2 minutes before we went live. So you've spoken a bit there about fatigue. What would you say is the aim for the pace of a battle in Medieval 3?
Yeah, so that's something that we talked a lot about. As you can imagine, that all Total War titles previously, I think they're almost like they have roughly a similar pacing, but there are clear differences.
Shifts, yeah,
exactly, shifting sort of the Total War feel, shifting that around, and we're very curious about what the community thinks, what the feedback is. But I think our aim currently is to slow down tempo a little bit, ultimately making sure that your decisions, you feel like you're able to make more strategic decisions that you can layer on top of each other. A more pronounced sense of phases, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but essentially almost like getting the feel across that, okay, now's the skirmishing phase. Now let's first think about how can I dominate the skirmishing phase of battle? How can I set up that first clash of the lines? And then, okay, now the lines have clashed. What do I do now? So a little bit more of that strategic feel in battle.
For sure. And obviously the army makeup and setup will affect that depending on the type of battle, but so it's always going to be a kind of sliding scale of sorts. But yeah, basically more time to think strategically.
So I can see some people talking about it. I can see chat; it's going very fast. So if the team out there see anything that they think we want to answer, I'll pull from it. But some people were asking, what is this an in-game screenshot? Is it concept art? What are they kind of looking at here?
Well, this is of course concept art, so this is not in the game or in engine. But I think it illustrates some of the things we talked about here with the window to the world, in a sense of how the UI is meant to be really lightweight. It doesn't get in the way of the experience. One thing that I think we really love about some of the titles like Medieval 2 is how the UI and the sort of almost like skeuomorphic, like the flags in the world, they feel really like one. It doesn't get in the way of the experience, and I think that's sort of the benchmark we are honing in on. Obviously all very early, but that's sort of a target look and feel shot here ultimately.
Yeah.
The other thing that Pav already mentioned, campaign battle connection. Something that I think we care a lot about is that when you are in the battle, you can almost recognize, where am I on campaign? You can locate the battlefield, you know where it is, or vice versa, right? Like when you see your location on campaign, you know, okay, if I load in, I will roughly have sort of this environment. That's sort of highlighted here by these mountain ranges, which aren't just, let's say, cool vistas in the background. They are there because it represents your location on campaign.
And I think we've touched on it in the past. I think I even responded in a forum that it's been a challenge for all of our titles. We've achieved it to varying degrees, different games, from different systems, giving us that kind of connection. So we're trying to find the right balance between having the clear campaign kind of landmarks and areas presented in battle that are recognizable, immersive, but in a way that's sustainable for our teams to be able to create and test as well, crucially.
Yeah. I did see a question from chat, and I don't know if you even have an answer for this at the moment, but I think I saw it a couple of times of so firstly people commenting on the pace and what you've spoken about, which actually is a question we're going to throw to in a minute, so we'll get back to that. But asking about what kind of size maps you would be aiming for, and if you're aiming to make bigger maps to help slow down that experience, or if it's about other mechanics within the map, right? The terrain, the unit types.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's of course a very it's a contentious topic.
Mm-hmm.
I think we replied to this very specifically in the forums, so some people would have seen it. But we think of, like, Total War has a very specific game feel in battles, and there's a certain sense of, okay, how many control pieces do I have? How many pieces do I care about? And I have to maneuver around the battlefield. Sometimes it can be challenging, lots of pausing required because just so much is going on. So currently our aim is to represent a roughly similar army size in terms of control pieces.
Mm-hmm.
That then translates, of course, into, let's say, how many soldiers you would overall expect on the battlefield. And that then translates a step further into the environment, where the environment is too vast. It feels like that proverbial sausage in the hallway kind of thing. Like it has to have a certain tightness overall. So
yeah. So to your question, yes, it's very much to do with the unit types, the ground types, the weather effects, all of these things kind of feeding into it. And we are focusing on that kind of core Total War experience within Warcore, and making sure that we can get all of those pieces working to in the best way we can, without introducing kind of unknowns, like playing with messing too much with that formula.
Yep.
So yeah.
I did have one last note here on this section of a discussion of momentum. If there's anything else you wanted to talk about with that for context.
Yes. So it's ultimately the idea that, so when we looked at a few historical, like, cool benchmark battles, right? What became really apparent is that the most dramatic battles, the ones you would want to see a movie about, are the ones where sort of victory was snatched away from the jaws of defeat, right? Where sort of something looked pretty bad, and then something happened somewhere on the battlefield, and the battle was turned around. And that's sort of the notion of momentum, that if you would watch the battle, you would see, oh, things are going poorly, but then momentum turns around.
Yeah.
And of course, Grunwald is an example where the Teutonic Order was kind of sort of doing pretty well, almost winning, and then things turned around. Bouvin, Battle of Bouvin is another example. Agincourt to a degree as well, even though it's famous more for other things, but also a case of not necessarily just that the underdog is winning, but rather that one side is doing poorly and then can turn things around.
Yep.
And that's something we're really eager to represent. Again, morale comes into this a little bit, where, so if you could imagine it as you're a soldier on the battlefield, okay, and you see someone on the right doing a heroic stand, winning perhaps a battle that weren't supposed, or nobody thought possible that they would win. And that sort of sparks and creates hope, and then ripples through the army, almost like a positive, we have chain routing, of course, but almost like a positive jolt of hope that can easily be squashed again. It's not like now the avalanche is turning, but can create a spark where you can either achieve victory yourself, or where if you're doing well in battle, you have to be mindful and be careful, like,
the right battle cry in the right moment, right?
Yeah. The right kind of general snipe in the right moment. It's something that gives you more agency and hope as well. Even things are looking like you're pretty much done. There's a hope, there's a chance, and it kind of, in the simulation plays into that as well, that it's not just contrived kind of gamey step by step. No, these things can happen if you play it right.
Yeah.
You can turn get victory from the clinches of
the big example here would be that you're sort of demonstratively, the king is lifting the visor, right, and the flag is raised to show everyone, I'm still here, even though it looks pretty bad, I'm still here.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And that's part of the simulation, right, where suddenly a glimmer of hope, they get squashed immediately, right? So
it's like watching people for the first time press the button in Shogun 2, where they dismount and go into the square and think, oh my god, what have they just done? But then you see the morale effect that has.
It's just the magic and the replayability that you get from that as well, and the different scenarios that can play out and the stories you can tell, I think, is really powerful.
Then I am conscious of time. If you guys are that's kind of us trying to establish the foundation, right, for battle discussion.
Yep.
So if it's right with you, I'll throw to the question that we're going to be asking.
Yep.
And we'll all hope all of the things work. I think they do. So these are the two questions we have for our battle vision. So the first is, what is the most essential battle mechanic needed to create an authentic representation of land battles? And how have you felt about the pace and speed of battles in past titles? So is there anything maybe you'd want to add to that first one? So what would you see as or what would you see as a battle mechanic, if that's what they're thinking about?
Yeah, so I mean, we've thrown around a lot of terms here and sort of features and mechanics. But I think it's great to hear the expectation and wants of people and wishes. Ultimately cohesion is something that we had a lot of internal chats around discipline, and then seeing the discussion in the forums and in Victor's proposal on cohesion, we're like, oh yeah, maybe we should really look at it more from a cohesion angle, and we saw the benefits and we sort of merged our approach, right? So I guess if there are other things people want to really throw into the room, we will absolutely take it into our discussions.
We haven't spoken about supplies, for example.
Yep.
There's lots of different things that we could
ammo, the classic.
And anything then on the pace and speed of battles? Any extra context you want to give?
Yeah, well, we talked about different Total Wars having different paces. So just hearing thoughts on what what players think about the different titles, the benefits, and of the different paces, I think would be good to know.
I think it's the way we look at it is always double checking our assumptions with things like this, right? And our assumption certainly is that, generally speaking, the community for historical titles certainly wants a little bit more of that slow down, like a slower pace, a bit more strategic, and it's good to confirm or perhaps dispel.
Absolutely. Then I will quickly ask the community team if they know if the forum posts are up yet, just so I know whether to push people there or tell them to hold. But for now, then we can move on to our second section of our vision, which is, now we've got the foundation, right? We all know what the aim is for battles. We can talk a bit about sieges, which is more why we're here today, right?
Yeah, and we thought it might make sense to actually start with the campaign context briefly. Last time, I believe, in the forums, there was a lot of talk around our intentions on the war and peace cycle, right? So that there's a clearer sense of, okay, war is breaking out now, and the realm mobilizes, and you fight a few decisive battles, and then, an outcome is made, like peace is made, a deal is struck, and you have that sort of rhythm. And we see sieges very much as almost like the climactic moments, right? Like when you first defeated the enemy king in battle and he's fleeing to his capital, and then that's where the final stand is made, and that's where you crush and we see achieve ultimate victory. So siege has some of the climactic pieces in that war and peace cycle.
So a huge investment in time and effort, and it's not something that we want to occur every other turn, lots of sieges all at once. So that's where the war and peace cycle, the pacing of war comes in, really.
That's again sort of let's say an assumption in terms of community sentiment is that in past titles maybe we had a bit too many sieges, and I think that's something we looked at where also from an authenticity point of view, like a medieval war wasn't just siege after siege after siege. Even we see campaigns in Italy would have been counterpoint to that, but I think good to say verify with everyone. Yes, so that's the first part. That's basically the context. So the way we think about it is less sieges, they're rarer, but they're more epic, right? So and really leaning into a lot of things we now talked about in terms of battle, a bit slower pace, a clear rhythm, right? When you think of sieges, you really think of, okay, it wasn't just about the wall. It was really about, almost like overcoming the settlement itself. Ties into big legacy features from past titles that we're really excited to bring back, multiple layers of walls, where you can see that rhythm forming where, big clash when you attack the outer walls, then a bit of a, let's say, regroup period for both armies, and then again, big pace.
And again, a clear campaign to battle connection where you're investing in the defenses of your city within the campaign. You're upgrading your walls. You're upgrading different elements, and that's represented in battle. So your investment in campaign is directly represented in what you're seeing in the battlefield and how many layers of wall or defenses you have to defend or as an attacker fight through.
So how paranoid you are will really affect how easy it is then to defend when you're attacked.
Yeah. And that's, of course, again, like the window to the world, right? Where you, I think last time, talked a lot about window to the world is the immersion, the detail, but also reaching through and manipulating the world and leaving your mark. And that's definitely something we're going to come back to in a bit.
A fair few people asking if moats are something you'd consider.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
That's so far. That's the intent. If we can make them work.
I didn't know if they were in the in-engine demonstration that we have.
No, not yet. They're actually
They're
just
currently
this morning.
being-
I think this morning was a post. Oh, I have a first version of it working.
Yeah, I
It's
figured-
not in this one though.
We increased the depth by some meters this morning.
Make it harder to swim across.
That would be an example. Last time I
Yeah.
believe we talked about building perks, which
Yeah.
was a term that people
Yeah.
really didn't like, and I mean we didn't like.
No. Yeah.
I believe Cody Bonds, he was suggesting
improvements.
building improvements.
Yeah, building improvements.
Yeah, maybe a candidate. But modes is something we consider as a good example for that, where on campaign you generally upgrade walls as a separate building chain, and then a mode would be something like an improvement you attach on top.
Yeah. But we'll get to that later. I think we've got a question where we're gonna put to everyone about that as well.
Then
Yeah, just to show one,
Yeah.
you know, that we were, let's say, we're cultured enough. Great inspiration that we had. Luke, one of our senior designers, he found this very, very early on. It was sort of a driving force. It's a painting by Éloi Firmin Ferron about the siege of Rhodes when the Hospitaliers captured it in early 14th century. Are we seeing it? Yeah.
Screen's broken.
And it's sort of a
it's just
really...
a holiday.
let's say, vibrant and evocative picture of a siege, like painting of a siege, where you really get that sense of, you know, where's Wally or Waldo or Walter. The window to the world, you see that detail, but you also see the carnage and you see the emotion that's in it. So I think a great picture to sort of, that was the early driving force behind our concepts.
Fantastic. Then, if it's right with you guys, we will ask the question we have for the Art Vision section, Sieges, and then we will move on. So, I believe, question 2. Yes. So the first one of these is very similar to the last one, which is what is the most essential battle mechanic needed to create an authentic representation of siege battles? So we'll have the answers for land battles, but if something, and it could be the same answer, right? It could be that something is really key for both, but if you think there's something that's more important for sieges, this gives the opportunity to air that out. And then, how important are 360-degree sieges, which is attacker deployment fully encircling the city for you, and how often are you making use of multi-pronged attacks? That might be one worth explaining.
Yes. So it's our understanding that one of our key, let's say, the manifests of Total War siege battles is 360 sieges, right? That the entire settlement can be part of your battle space, your battlefield. And it's something that I think we're really keen on bringing back, or have brought back. But one thing that often comes up is essentially restrictions more from a campaign angle. There are cities like Leon is an example we talked a lot about, where historically it was always attacked from the south, right? So when you would invade these lands, you would have to attack the city essentially from a fixed angle. So you lose, let's say, the traditional Total War 360 deployment options. You're restricted. For that battle, based on campaign context, you can only attack because of a river or other typically environmental factors.
And sometimes there's also an authenticity angle where certain settlements were just so vast to accurately represent them in scale. You know, our battle would contain maybe just one kind of angle potentially, right? Which is something that comes up as well. If we want to really show the scale of an epic city, we should potentially provide different kind of areas of attack. So it's an interesting kind of dilemma, and something that we always, when we approach a historical Total War, it's a topic that always comes up.
Yeah.
You know, and again, which is why, you know, across our Total War games, there are different approaches and different titles.
There are. I will say, I thought I was going crazy because there's that little horseman covering the word, and it's just on ours because we've got the YouTube feed.
Okay.
So there's no horse. When I was referencing a horseman covering the words, I was clearly insane. So to answer those questions, there is the link there, and it's also in the description of YouTube. It may be being posted on Twitch, but if you follow that link, either now maybe or after the stream for sure, we will have categories for all these questions. So. We will be moving on to our next section, which I have a button. There we go. I'll take us back to the camera. So I think there's going to be some videos to show.
So we're finally getting to the meat now.
Yes.
This is not
The show
in-engine running code yet. These are videos of more our tools, essentially. Talking a little bit about how we're approaching the challenge of authoring our settlements. So
I don't know how often we show tools and.
Never, I think, or very rarely, or maybe post onto a live.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Producer, while he's getting that set up, if you can double click the middle third and swap it, because they swapped seats, so it shouldn't be Josh Life Pav, it should be Josh Pav Life. He's just hidden it. That's it, and that's fair. That's his prerogative. Okay, you ready for me to come over?
Yes.
Alright.
So, what are we looking at here? It's a video that Fedon, one of our level designers, recorded recently from our in-game tools of how sort of you author a settlement. And I'm going to play this in a bit, but I think worth going back a couple of steps. So last time we talked about pre-production, and why are things not pretty yet? It's because our artists are really mainly focusing on how are we building all of our assets. Yep. How are we building the campaign map, and most importantly, how are we building settlements?
Yeah, and and actually, in what you're going to see today, both in the videos and actually in the engine as well, we've had a lot more art team focus on battles in a campaign. Campaign has had less of that focus, because on battle, one of our traditionally one of the trickiest, one of the biggest challenges in content is settlement offering. Is the battle map, the connection with campaign, of course, but also it's just the offering of the buildings and the settlements, building the settlements themselves, but also coming up with an elegant way to represent settlements and the different sizes of settlements in Battlefield. Yeah. So we've been progressing further with battle environment art kind of pre-production. But again, what you're seeing is blockouts. These are very pretty blockouts, because we're constructing our buildings from kit pieces. So the artists are blocking out all the individual bits that make up a building, sticking materials on them, so to get a feel for the balance of where the geometry is going to go, where the materials are going to go, and then obviously these will be then taken and made up as final assets. But these are all blockout assets, no matter, even though they have roof tiles and maybe bricks texture. These are very basic 3D geometry with textures on them. So yeah, everything is, as always, subject to change, because this is pre-production assets.
But why is it such a challenge, right? And I think that's where really our goals of the campaign battle connection is making things difficult for us, but we obviously believe it's worth it. In that, if you think of a single map, like we call it a layout, like here's our layout for Paris. This is just one version of it that we can put together in an editor, right? You have to consider a lot of campaign hooks. Of course, the classic legacy example is campaign buildings, right? You've constructed a massive minster, like a cathedral. You want to see it represented in battle.
You upgraded your walls.
Exactly.
The moats.
Yeah.
You want to see in battle.
And with Medieval 3, we want to push that angle even more so, right? We talk a lot about rewriting history and leaving your mark on the world, and I think that's where it's really important to represent, okay, what have I done to my cities? Like, what people are living there? Are they wealthy? What culture are they from? How dense is the city
population? Yeah.
So, but enough talk. Let's play this. So what you're seeing here is a single layout. And what the designer here is doing is essentially selecting, you could say, activating different layers, setting the wall level to a different level, changing settlement density, changing the overall size. There's a castle wall size, wall height, number of wall layers, right? And you can really see how, let's say, starting from a single smaller city, almost like a hamlet, how it's growing over time.
And again, as always with these things, we haven't settled on number of sizes, on number of upgrades. These are all the things that we're exploring through our prototyping, through our testing. What is the great balance of settlement levels, wall levels, number and size versus the gameplay experience. That these are all the things that we're figuring out during pre-production, and then once we settle on it, that's what we'll produce.
I think what's really exciting about this is, we talked a lot about our timeline and wanting to represent like a sense of progression through the medieval era. So if you think about a single settlement, perhaps your capital, or like a settlement that's an important trade hub that's fought over a lot, you would essentially see the settlement over the generations and decades and centuries grow and grow over time and really develop in different ways.
See people asking already if we could view the settlements in peacetime, like in Rome 1.
Oh, City View.
Yeah, good old City View. Yeah.
Well, we're kind of doing that here, aren't we? No one's
Well, this is peacetime. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. City View is one of those returning kind of. It's a lot of us kind of love that, and you know, it's always finding a way. I remember when I joined. Slight little detour. I'm sorry. When I joined. CA, I really loved it, and I was talking to some of the designers, and the designers really disliked it. It was like there was no gameplay to it. There was we couldn't really do anything. So we, you know, what's the point? I was like, no. But for me, it was that window to the world. I could see and immerse myself in the world because I knew there was a world there outside of just my battles. Yeah. So finding a way to do that is definitely. But I think what we're looking at is the campaign. And having that window to the world within the campaign, so you can look at your city in peacetime in the campaign and get that evocative kind of feel for the world.
Yeah, what you can see here is that essentially, as your settlement grows, you might get, you know, different layers of walls with different wall heights, and then of course, sort of the keep in the center as sort of the final bastion you have to overcome.
Some of the eagle-eyed of you will spot here that we've got different sizes of wall, and the widths as well are very different to before. But we'll get to that. But yeah, there's some exciting changes that we're working with.
Gonna swap videos.
Let me put us back to camera then. There we go. Right. So what should we be expecting to see from the second video? I've realised live I haven't seen any of these videos.
Oh, really?
Have you not? I've loaded them all up, and I was like, I'm going to have them all explained to me anyways. Are you ready for me?
Yeah. So this is essentially the same thing again, just from a top-down view, which is a little bit less, let's say, window to the world, a little bit less evocative. But I think it shows the footprint really well, and how we're really, let's say, capturing a big range of sizes for settlements. You know, starting from very intimate battles that, you know, feel quite like, okay, almost like at the town squares where the final stand happens, and then up to larger metropolis.
I look forward to the videos that analyze every single click on those boxes of what every single option is.
Yeah.
Look forward to In Fear.
All subject to change.
Yeah. Now, of
except
course,
the bits we like.
Except the bits we like, yeah.
What this also helps with, like, this very, let's say, systemic view of authoring our cities, is that generally it will help a lot with variety, which is obviously always that we can never have enough variety, right? Like, but we all know that feeling of, okay, you rock up to a new settlement and then you're like, yeah, I know that layout, right?
Layout A. I've seen
exactly.
That before. That's the same one I thought in Scotland, but I'm in southern France. Okay.
And I think that this very systemic approach will help to sprinkle in that variety systemically, because they're different culture living there, so the buildings look different. The density is different, so you have more open spaces. Perhaps it's more wealthy or less wealthy, so you get a lot of that visual and gameplay variety.
And this is that kind of, you know, the development kind of reality. This is where we're trying to, you know, find ways that we can effectively offer these settlements to be able to provide the variety and variation for the players, but in a way that's sustainable for us to create, because ultimately we've been constrained in the past with the number of settlements we can produce, just because of the sheer time it takes to put them together and the team sizes that we have to do them.
And is that what this tool's unlocked then, the ability to?
It's the improvements that we're making to the tool, and safe to say, obviously, all of the tooling that we're seeing here, it's a mix of the tools that we're developing as well as kind of existing. But what we mentioned in the blog, you know, we're aiming to release, Warforge and the tool set. So the things you're seeing here in some shape will be available to our modding communities.
Yeah. I think what this top-down view also shows nicely is sort of overall our, let's say, current thinking in terms of sizes. It's again like obviously a topic where I know that some people really care about even larger settlements, but I think one thing we feel like looking back at past titles, Three Kingdoms, for example, had really big cities, especially at the top end, that ultimately the siege battles didn't feel as great because it's just too much open space, ultimately unused ground. And I think that's where we are. I mean, you can see they're still massive.
Hold on, let me bring it back.
But perhaps, how did you describe it? The biggest cities aren't quite as big as in past titles.
Yes, currently. Yeah.
Thinking.
But but again, it's for us to find that right balance, because it's and it feeds to the pace as well. You know, the pace of the battle at the different stages, and also the agency of what you're able to do. I mean, again, one of the things that we loved about past titles that had the multi-layering is that kind of is the you know the agency that you had to do, you know, be it attack in different ways or defend in different ways. The 360 comes into to that as well. So yeah, all of these are the different kind of elements that we have to juggle to find that ideal balance for the game.
And of course, there can also be exceptions. You know, if you think of Constantinople.
Well, yeah, we mentioned in Attila, for example,
yeah.
we had two exceptions. We had Rome and Constantinople, which were huge compared to everything else.
Baghdad, yeah. Obviously, for these cities, we might go a bit larger, but yeah. Okay, next video.
You good to go? Right, I'm just gonna have a quick look at the chat and see if there's anything in there. I kind of just got some people saying, one person saying, I always say some people because I can't read the name quick enough. But it's actually it's Mr. Dogbert. Saying Constantinople was the best city siege map.
Yes, it was. Yeah. It was one of my favorites for sure. Well,
pretty epic,
I loved it because it was just so big. And actually, another example of a single attack direction as well.
Yep.
Even though it was technically 360, i.e., it was all within the battle. It was a single attack and had moats as well. Moats.
Okay, you ready for me?
Yes. So this is about walls specifically, wall authoring. This is showing off our new wall authoring tech, which I guess the big highlight is that it allows for non-rectangular shapes essentially, wiggly lines, you could say.
For anyone seeing this that may be familiar with other game engines, tooling, of other games, may think that this is standard, right? But no, this is something that our artists have been planning for many years, and we finally have the ability to kind of draw walls. That gives us far more flexibility when constructing settlements, and again, speaks to that.
Speeds up the process.
Speeds up the process. So again, sustainable workflows to be able to create more content for the game. It's really good stuff. And again, something that will be available to our modders.
That's just what I was about to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can make a city in the shape of your own name.
If you like, yeah. Will it play? Who knows? Well.
Yeah. We'll obviously see it in engine in a bit, but I think what's clearly sticking out is the width of the walls, which is something we looked at. Thanks for Dawn again for giving me the precise numbers. That just to illustrate, Pharaoh had 11 meter sized walls, so
width, yeah.
Platforms, essentially like big, right? And here it's 3.5 meters, so really giving you that. Anyone who ever visited a medieval castle or any fortifications, it's dense.
This has been a legacy challenge. So in my experience working with battles, and we've always struggled with trying to represent kind of authentic scales when it comes to walls, when it comes to roads, paths, avenues.
Streets,
we used to have a restriction. The restriction was about 32 meters. So if you think past historical titles inside cities, massively wide avenues to help aid pathfinding, AI, and whatnot. And what we've always tried to do is try to find ways to really get those more realistic and authentic scales. And that's what we have here. And that this feeds into the design of the settlements, but also into the tech, the underlying tech, where we're working on the pathfinding and unit control to be able to work with these more realistic scales.
So it's not just about the authenticity; it's also a little bit about let's say the carnage of medieval battle, right? Like seeing soldiers being pushed down the wall, and so just immersing yourself in that sort of dense, almost claustrophobic environment, right? High up in the air.
So even though you mentioned the settlements maybe the largest maybe a little bit smaller, but there's actually more to do in the sense of within the design because of the level of control you have within the settlement and the different approaches, the different avenues, streets, alleyways.
I have seen a few questions, and we will. So that's kind of the end of our tool workshop section. So we will get to the question, but before we get there, this might be useful to set up for our next section, which will be in engine. So there were some questions asked about AI. Battle AI. Has there been any changes to it to compensate for all of these systems and the kind of new maps?
Yes, I mean we have across campaign AI and battle AI. These are teams working with the Warcore engine and the changes that we're making. We're absolutely supporting all of these innovations and changes.
Yeah, I mean, we're very much aware about the community expectations around AI. We see one of the main, let's say, especially for the more advanced and experienced players, one of the more prominent sticking points, you could say, for a bunch of our previous titles. So I think really looking at that in detail, is really important.
And we talked about this within the context of the campaign, where we're essentially, we're rebuilding these kind of staple historical Total War, features and building blocks essentially, and the same with Battle. We're addressing step by step these key areas that we're keen to achieve, and we're working together with all of the teams to solve those challenges.
Also fair to say, lifting the veil of game development, I think right now in early pre-production our focus is really on almost like establishing what the AI needs to solve.
Yes.
Really making sure that come up with the right systems that would allow us to build the content and the variety, and that creates the gameplay we want to see and visual experience, and then the AI is then able to actually look at it. Okay, now we're going to solve it.
And that's part of pre-production, where we collaborate with the different disciplines, and we pose challenges, and sometimes they're resolved. Sometimes we have to iterate on the direction slightly to work with the constraints that a team may have.
Yep.
And that's the kind of the magic of pre-production, where we're kind of problem solving and figuring out a way out for these challenges. So then when we get to production, we implement and get it done. And then we play the game, and more feedback comes in, and then we iterate more, and that's the beauty
the cycle
of game
continues. Well then, if it's right with you guys, I'm conscious of time. We are probably going to be another 40-ish.
Okay.
So I'll ask the question, and then we can move on to our in-engine demonstration. So hopefully this is the right number. Yes, it is. So, what specific campaign context would you expect to see represented in Battle? So some examples there, and some stuff I think you guys spoke about while the videos were playing. So constructed buildings, landmark terrain, and reinforcement of rival positions. So what is campaign context?
Yeah, just overall on that, I think Total War is an interesting franchise where sometimes we joke about it's 2 games in one, right? And sometimes you can see in the community like, oh, campaign is more important, no, battle is more important. I think where we're at is that we understand that the beauty of Total War is both coming together as one experience, where the battles are awesome and cool because they matter because they're part of your campaign. You wouldn't want to just play your campaign. The battles are almost like when you get rewarded for your strategizing, right? Where you can finally zoom in and live through that Hollywood moment. And on the other hand, like battles without campaign, they lack the context, they lack the purpose of that, right? So really bringing both together is a big initiative, you could say, for Medieval 3, bringing them stronger together than before. And that's where this certainly comes in. Like, see, we're thinking a lot about these connection points, but if there was any, key.
So we talked about a few things like population density. So we're already looking to represent the population density with the buildings that are present in the battle. We talked about things like specific buildings or upgrades, like the wall defenses. But anything else that I think would kind of speak to that ambition of having this connection.
I think one thing I'd say that we saw from some of the last discussion we saw, and would be nice to kind of emphasize here, is just because we've mentioned something, that doesn't mean it's not worth talking about and mentioning in there. So even for the questions of what's the most important mechanic, just because we've said morale, that doesn't mean they go, oh, well, they're doing morale. This is the other thing. It's really useful for us. So we spoke about moats, we spoke about wall levels, knowing what that general expectation, including the things we've spoken about, lets us know where we're on the right track, as well as what wants to be seen in addition.
And likewise, we've called out some of these questions that we're posing here. But if there's something that we've spoken about that someone out there feels strongly about it, stick a forum thread about. Look, you said this. Let's dive into it. Let's dig in and discuss.
Yeah, and I know that, or we know that some of the worries of the community out there is that perhaps, okay, how can we strike the balance here between taking a lot of feedback on board, but not trying to, serve too many different threads? And I think certainly, we do have a clear direction for the game, which is partially founded also on our understanding of the community. Like Roger was saying last week,
It's not too many cooks, right? It's sense checking.
Our egos are big enough to know where
but
I heard there was a big laugh at that when he said that.
But we read everything. We read everything, or as much as we can. We process everything, and we discuss everything that we feel like is really relevant, and we're trying to really.
And it's really interesting because we love our games. We play our games. We're huge fans of Medieval and the game that we're making. Often within the team, we're debating, A or B, and maybe we have an equal 50-50 A or B. And then again, when we look at what the community is saying, we use that in those conversations. Say, well, actually, here is the sentiment around this particular feature. Let's maybe consider that, right? Because we absolutely know what we want to do here with this game. But again, this game is important to everyone. It's Medieval 3, right? So we want to get everyone involved so we can hear what the community voice.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well then, I'm going to swap us back to main camera. So Life is going to get set up I guess an in-engine build.
So this is our
game.
Our game. This is Battle currently. This is our settlement prototype, I would say. Yeah.
Yep. Prototype map. Yep.
You ready for me?
Yeah. We will be essentially playing, even though we're still building Medieval 3, we'll be playing a little bit.
We'll be clicking here on there. There's
which has me slightly anxious, but we'll be actually playing essentially through moments or vignettes, how we call it, right? Like, a few key moments in this.
That's right. Yeah, we want to point to some of the things we've been talking about. So we'll be talking about the various improvements and things we're looking at. Obviously, this is pre-production build. So as we've mentioned before. The buildings, they've got roof tiles, they look pretty. These are blockouts. These are good-looking blockouts that will inform the final art that we produce after. You will see bugs. You will see blobbing. You will see units getting stuck. The animation set is very limited. There are placeholder animations, but still, the animations don't play out as we intend. We're improving. Obviously, we're looking at improving the pathfinding and the behavior. Currently, right now, actually, the battle team are going to be working on improvements to the squishiness of units, the collision units,
between
how units interact physically with each other, with the environment, which will play a big part in how they navigate through the various kind of choke points, and so all of these things are work in progress. So already we have much slicker navigation through narrow pathfinding areas.
We'll get there.
Yeah, okay, we'll get there. Yeah. Spoilers, but what I'm trying to say is this is far from done.
Yep.
So just to set the context.
And the point of us showing this obviously is to help inform the context for the questions, right?
Absolutely, and also the beauty of this and these streams is that you're going to see the progress.
Yeah.
So we're showing Battle now. Next time we stream Battle, you will clearly see an improvement, and you'll see the trajectory that we're moving down based on everything that we're discussing.
And maybe one of the things suggested from the forums, right, through this, they see in the battle next time.
No, it's all right. That's good. Okay. Okay.
Well, thank you. I've moved the bottom bar along. That's all I had to do.
Okay.
So that's on pause. We are obviously attacking with a few smaller forces here, attacking
and I will
the city.
And I'll keep interjecting as I see things that, again, UI is also placeholder and work in progress. So even though we've got these kind of banners above the units, as you saw in the concept art, we are looking at, we're keen to get kind of flags and banners into the actual 3D world.
And you can see
our first casualty of Medieval 3 there.
Yep.
And just to showcase like a little, let's say, mechanical nugget here, just to another example of sort of perhaps not necessarily psychology of battle per se, but with archers you can now actually suppress enemy units. So we can see now here this unit is suppressed because it's been fired upon. Suppression will, for ranged units, reduce their accuracy and defensive capabilities.
Do you want to call them out just immediately?
Yes, let's call them out.
Yes, there are pocket ladders here, as you can see, but this is purely to aid kind of development. We are working on the team. We already have kind of some versions of carried ladders, which is absolutely the intention for Medieval.
Yep.
They said it before they even popped up, They were like, I bet it's going to be pocket ladders.
And it is for a pre-production prototyping because it's just quicker, more instant. You'll also notice the size of the ladders because they're there to accommodate the different wall sizes that we have. So yeah, this is purely work in progress. But yes, I can confirm that we are working on ladders carried by troops for the final game. And maybe next time we stream battle, you'll see that.
I think hopefully we see some entities falling down. That's always a cool spectacle that everyone loves. But I think it was always such a cool thing, especially in titles like Rome 1 or Med 2, like sort of that stand on the walls, feeling the pressure and the sort of the last defense of a tower with your elite units. And I think this is going to replicate this really cool.
Yeah,
cool way.
Less space on the walls, so more chance of falling off.
And are they going into that tower?
Yes, I'm just hoping we can engineer this. So one thing we actually wanted to talk a little bit about is this is literally our debug camera. So in the end, it would look a little bit more fancy.
We'll figure out a way of doing this.
We talked a lot about, let's say, the window to the world and the detail that can come across if we have interior fighting.
So literally looking through the window of a building.
Quite literally. And then sort of, you're busy, of course, with making your decisions and whatnot. But then in key moments, you zoom in or you look through the window, and you see sort of that intimate fighting on stairs. I think that's what's really cool about that.
Maybe I'm skipping ahead, but saying that, it's worth mentioning that Gorn are magical towers spawning arrows, because they have to literally be occupied by troops with bows and arrows to function as a tower.
Otherwise, you're just throwing your sword, hoping you hit something, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the features that don't have working yet, but we're really excited about, is the idea of, let's say, contextual environmental weapons. So a unit being able to pick up, let's say you have sword units on a tower and walls, they're able to pick up some ambient bows and fire at the enemy. So
there's actually a question here of what's the point of using placeholder ladders if that's not your intention? Shouldn't you test the mechanics that you actually want them to be played?
Well, I mean, yes, but everything comes in order. We have to prioritize what we develop first, and we know that we want ladders to be carried.
Yep.
So that's done. We don't need to prototype that because we understand the constraints and what we need to do there. What we do need to prototype is the size of the different walls.
Yep.
The entities traveling up those ladders to get to the wall. So it's prioritizing where we put the effort when, because we have to we have a team, we have a finite amount of time. So we in game development as any software development, prioritizing and doing things in the right order is key.
But yes, I will reconfirm. Pocket ladders, they're there for testing.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
As we're proving out
debug. Yeah.
Nice. I think we talked about everything with the walls. Unfortunately, not many people fell down. That's a bit sad about that.
And also, last time they fought on the stairs themselves, didn't they?
Yeah.
Probably Alfonso and
And a nice touch to the interiors. I think something that a few comments in the forum was about why have physical destruction of buildings. I think one of the nice elements of that is when we have interiors. When you have a partially destroyed tower, you still have that kind of feeling. You can still have fighting on the interior.
Yeah.
Maybe they're exposed, partially collapsed towers, but it's still functional because the staircase is there. You still get some height, so it gives us again more variation in the kind of battlefield scape and the experience.
One, I would say it's an ambition and an intention, but one thing that was really great about this Siege of Rhodes painting. So the idea of
climbing on the rubble.
Climbing up the rubble. So if you destroy a wall piece, maybe entities can climb up to higher levels there.
Do we want to?
And there's the peril of the collapse as well as you're trying to get through.
Yep.
Do we want to pause there to ask our question before we move on to the next engine?
Yep.
I'm just checking that we covered everything that you wanted to in that section. So fighting through towers, pocket ladders, pocket ladders, pocket ladders. The level of verticality you expect, we spoke about a bit. Fighting on the stairs. So if there's archers at the top of that tower, does that mean I'm going to fight my way up the stairs to get to the top to kill the archers?
Yeah, indeed. Yes. I think I wasn't able to replicate it now, but we had some really cool videos where essentially you're fighting on 3 levels, on the ground, on the walls, and then on the tower.
Wow.
And that's just really cool spectacle. And it's the verticality we talked about.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. Then I will move us over to our question for the wall combat section, which is number 4. So this will be posted on the forums. We want your answers to it. That's why we're giving you all the context we can to get there. The question is, That is not the right
It's
question.
not the right
That's
question.
not the right question.
Let me read what the question is.
Where does that come from?
I have no idea where that comes from. There we go. It was, what was fun or frustrating about garrisonable buildings in previous Total Wars?
Yeah.
That's a past stream, isn't it?
That is a past stream.
Yeah, nice.
The ghosts of streams past, eh?
So
Yes,
So what did you? So basically, what did you like about garrisonable buildings or not?
Yes.
Those titles, yeah.
And titles like Empire, Napoleon had garrisonable buildings, and I think let's put it this way: I think we are aware of some of the strengths and weaknesses of it, what it did to the game and the gameplay, and it'd be great to get more thoughts from people.
Yeah, for sure.
I fear what the other questions are going to do when I press those buttons now. Okay, fantastic. So that is Walls. Are you ready for me to come back to you?
Yeah. So we talked about walls, and we touched, I think, on the idea of streets as well, and the width of streets. Again, some numbers here. Pharaoh, 32 meters.
That was not just Pharaoh. I mean,
Oh,
up until now,
yeah.
all past titles were
Yeah.
constrained. I say constrained. We had maybe narrower streets, but from our battle programming team,
We ought not to,
we got very, very worried if we went anywhere below 32 meter width. For sure, for pathfinding, for AI, for navigation.
And here you can see different widths. Some streets, of course, were wider than others, but the smallest one is 12 meters. So a much more intimate space, which helps a lot to sell, let's say, the maziness of some of the medieval cities, of course.
Yeah.
But also makes some sort of interesting gameplay choices, right? Like, do you go down the back route with some narrow streets, or the wider?
Again, you have more
Rainbows.
tools to create variation and varied gameplay within different settlements.
Before you show the street combat, I did have a couple of questions from the community that I thought would be interesting to answer. So you spoke about the walls being destructible, and that sparked a lot of imagination, a lot of thought. One person was asking if the walls are fully destructible, if there would be those kind of undestructible pillars.
Fully destructible.
Fantastic.
Saying it now.
Is your intent to be able to push ladders off?
We were having a debate about this this morning. If we could just, I don't know, if maybe next time we could do a little dev chat snapshot. But yes, we're literally debating it. Are they tied? Are they hooked? Should they be pushed? Are they heavy? So yeah, it's a conversation we're currently having.
The hope is definitely to allow for moments, the Helm's Deep collapsing ladder backwards. It's just a super cool spectacle, but obviously lots of challenges around it.
And it's something I'm sure we'll be discussing with our consultants as well, and how what's the in terms of authenticity, balance with the gameplay, and so it's something that there's definitely we're looking at, and it's hilarious. We were literally discussing that this morning.
Fantastic. Then back to you. Let's talk about street combat.
Okay. We wanted to show essentially some of the improved navigation through these narrow streets. Especially in older titles, always used to be quite a battle to navigate your troops around.
And again, just to highlight, it's not done yet. So there's still units getting stuck. There's still, it's still not perfect, but it's definitely, iterative steps in the right direction. And with that also is the user experience of navigating. So things like dragging out units and controlling your units through these tight spaces is something that we've been concentrating on as well.
Yeah, you can see that here. Like a bit more of a seamless drag out of units in the environment. As we discussed in the beginning, I think our goal, our intention is that generally movement through the streets would be more fluid. Again, like the bridge essentially between the big climactic moments, outer walls, inner walls, and the keep.
And that fluid movement is also something that we're looking at that we mentioned in terms of the collision of entities. So also when units interact with each other, when we're talking about battle lines, battle lines kind of moving, enveloping, flowing, that it all kind of feeds into this and what we're trying to do.
So is the intent there to make it feel like it is a group of soldiers, right? There's some individual movements in there that are...
And that's where the talk of the psychology and the cohesion comes in, the isolation of entities, and then pushing and staying together and holding, and the impact on morale and the psychology, all of that. Is systemic in a way, stemming from these improvements that we're looking at.
Before the next segment, I'll have to do some shenanigans here.
Okay, then shall I throw us over to the question?
Indeed.
So honestly, let's just see what comes up. Hey, it's the right question.
Okay, nice.
So the question we had here, so you've seen a bit of streets, a bit of the pathfinding and how we have it. So the question is, what are your hopes and fears for multi-layered sieges? So that is the progressing from holding the walls, losing the walls, falling back, street fighting, and then, as we'll show in a second, then defending the keep, right?
Yep, that's right.
So,
because we've had, again, in past titles, we've had the multi-layered sieges. We had obviously Medieval 2. We had in Shogun, and there's different, like I say, pluses, minuses. There's the flow, there's the pacing, which we've covered already, all the way through to last stands at the keep, and it's basically a broad question around from past experiences and your understanding of the period. What are your hopes and dreams?
Because I think you guys were talking about where would people want the majority of fighting to be, right? Mm-hmm. Is it 50% at the keep and the others are just fallbacks that you've lost?
So it's kind of just general feedback on that. On that. Sorry.
I think the worst. Let's say the pitfall we want to avoid is essentially a sense of slog. Mm-hmm. Right? That would be the worst version of a siege battle. It's like, I think sometimes in the past we did this really well with this rhythm. Shogun 2 comes to mind again, where you had these plateaus and there was a clear sense of, okay, I've captured that first one, I regroup my troops a little, rally them, essentially reorganize them, and then I make my next push. I think that's sort of the...
And this is the beauty of Total War and the simulation, right? Because then that slog is then affected by these kind of pivotal moments, the change that can occur. Also the various upgrades, what defensible upgrades, how they can, or lack of, changing the pace and the balance of all of that is key, and how all of these elements interplay.
Yeah, I guess that's something that hopefully the earlier videos showcased a little bit, that when we say multiple layers of walls, I mean, not every settlement will have that, right? It's basically the investment.
It's an investment,
It's your investment, or the state of the city and the campaign.
I can't wait for them to see that shot. That's such a cool shot. But I just want to say if Steve's listening, which I think he is, if you can just confirm if all of the questions are live on the forums, because I think we can start pushing people there now. So that link in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, that will take you to the forums where all of these questions we've asked. It'd be fantastic if you could give us some answers there. We'll look through those, read those, maybe another recap blog when we get towards our next stream to summarise what we've learned from that. Yeah. Okay, he said the forums are live, should be, we'll find out soon. Okay.
You tell us, and forums live, have a look at the link.
Are you ready for our final?
Yep.
So this is our final section of the stream, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So before we start, I think worth talking a little bit about defensible positions. Mm-hmm. That's essentially almost like another wall layer or fortifications that we would love players to be able to essentially construct and customize. One of the things we talked about very early on is essentially defender gameplay in sieges. Like, how can we make sure that a defender feels like, okay, I can actually, let's say, have some authorship here. The attacker decides where to attack. They had a lot of siege actions on campaign, perhaps, and they sort of they determine how the battle plays. But the defender is almost more like the backseat, right?
Yeah.
How can we give more authorship? And then, of course, we've tried similar things in Attila with barricades, and this is almost like like an evolution of this, inspired by some of the Italian sieges, for example, where the settlement was besieged and the population itself almost like was rallying and trying to improvise defenses. And that's really the fantasy of these. These are positions that would probably look like improvised cards being thrown over, perhaps little watchtowers quickly raised. That's sort of more of that improvised element of, these are the people of the city have now
stood up to defend. Yeah.
Stood up to defend,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Or raised defenses,
So we have two of them here. We can try to attack them with our troops. And we'll be like,
we do have water.
There is water, yes.
Doesn't go all the way around, so it's not legally a moat, right?
That is not a moat. No, that is
a
river. This is a river.
They just need to ditch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And this is just essentially one version of this right now. It's a bit, let's say, put together multiple pieces. You can see some barrels that people, push to place. Some obviously grey block, but there might be raised platforms that were quickly put together by the carpenters of the settlement. And then currently it's multiple units essentially manning these, but the goal would be that you can take perhaps just a single unit and essentially make your stand there.
Fantastic to see them running over the bridge, taking fire, and even so, everything is placeholder, right? But
Pathfinding across a very narrow bridge.
Yes, it's still evocative, right? That's the goal of blocking it out in this way.
And that's what these prototypes allow us to do is, again, play with the different balance of widths, different combination of bridges to fords to really find that nice balance, and also stress test when the teams are working on the pathfinding and the AI team is working on with that. They have that kind of essentially worst case or the different combinations of setups that we can then use when offering settlements.
Yep. I saw a couple of people asking it in the other one, but maybe more pertinent here, is friendly fire something you're considering? They're shooting kind of close to their friends there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I think obviously something that infamously was part of Attila, right? And I think, it's part of the simulation, really.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're talking about authenticity, it's something that's important to capture.
I think there's just something really, for me, really evocative about that sort of improvised last stand that the populace is doing together with the soldiers here. Obviously, a really cool set piece with the archers standing on top and sort of you're pouring in. The intention of these, and again, it sort of speaks a little bit to perhaps more the campaign, how sieges tie into campaign, is that a 20 versus 20, the full stacks against each other, should really not result in a victory for the attacker. And sort of, there's some challenges around this, but that's our intention, that if you have a siege, you should be able to hold off, don't name it to the cross, but there's maybe 8 to 11 units. As a defender, you should hold off like a 20 old school full stack, right? And obviously that's only possible if you have measures on your hands to actually apply that damage. Walls help with that, of course, and these defensible positions will be another way for you to hold a place with 1 or 2 units and really dish out a lot of damage.
It's kind of one of the defensible positions, the settlement upgrades, but also your ability to peel back as well, right, and fall back and utilize the defenses effectively at the right time. So there's definitely an element, that classic element, right, of kind of retreating through the layers to your if you have them, right, because obviously less developed and earlier settlements will not.
Yeah, you can see here the unfortunate end of our troops.
Oh dear.
You've lost your very first Medieval 3 battle, really.
You've
got to push through to the keep.
Well, no, we can.
You set things up that this is hard to lose, basically.
So onto the keep. Yeah. And crucially, as with the towers, the keep is more than just a box. There is an interior that you can actually fight through to. And you've got there's some archers at the top there.
So if you want to hide your king at the top of the tower,
you could, you could retreat all the way to the top, and have a last stand from the very top of the keep. Yeah.
This is probably going to be impossible for me to replicate now, but you were able to get some really cool shots and scenes where essentially now within the keep, soldiers are fighting their way up.
Yeah, we had an epic kind of playtest where you could literally see the soldiers fighting up the stairs, making their way to the top. So it's like, really, those archers coming down to meet you. Yeah.
The stream, at some point, it will go from building Medieval 3 to just watching Medieval 3, and we'll just watch life climb up towers and keeps.
Yeah.
And there's, of course, a lot for us to improve in terms of how smooth the navigation is through these very tight spaces. I mean, we talked about how it's a challenge to get to 12 meters street width, making sure that our entities and units flow through these super tight spaces. It'll be quite a challenge. But
it all kind of feeds into the behavior and interaction of entities, and it'll feed into the way they interact with each other when they're fighting, the battle lines, the squishiness of them. It's all all kind of works to achieve a much more evocative and slick kind of experience.
That's cool to see them all getting ready. Will they be able to shoot down?
Yeah, for sure. We've all had experiences with past titles of units getting stuck on walls, getting stuck in towers. We're really trying to kind of stop that from happening with Med 3, so everything just flows.
bit of stuckness still happening.
But yeah, still a long way to go. But again, this is the idea. You
Yeah.
know, we're showing you pre-production kind of builds here. So and as we stream more, you're going to see things change. You're going to see the improvements as we lead up to as we move through the development process.
Brilliant. Well then, shall I move us on to our final question, and then
Yes.
we'll start to wrap things up. So, let's see if it's the right question. Hey. So our last two questions, which should be live now. The first of which is, what was fun or frustrating about barricades in previous Total War titles? So you spoke about Attila and the barricade system there. I think a lot of people, obviously Warhammer 3, the most recent iteration of barricades and towers, so hearing what they thought there. There was actually a fair bit of discussion I saw in the chat about, would I be able to build towers like in Warhammer 3?
No, that's not something you consider in the battle now. It's more of a, I guess it ties into the campaign context.
Yeah.
That over seasons and months of siege, you would.
Yeah, we want to kind of have that approach where, you know, anything significant you invest in the campaign on the campaign side, and the battle side is more of the kind of what you already have kind of bunched together.
It's
And
late
the
final-
kind of pre-battle,
It's the final assault, playing out within
final preparation,
a matter of a couple of hours.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's question 1. Question 2 was, what kind of wall and tower defenses would you like to see in sieges?
Yeah, so we talked about moats, but you know, we're also discussing things, you know, hoardings and barbicans and you know, all of these kind of things.
Different types of gates,
Yep.
ultimately gate mechanisms.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to clarify the tower defenses. We're not talking about plonking a tower down, right?
No.
We're talking about
talking
a
about,
tower
again,
that exists, how to defend
On
that
top
tower.
of the tower, like bastion artillery.
Bastion artillery, and
Which
again,
I can see a lot of people.
yeah, we're talking about, again, you are on the campaign map.
Yep.
You are choosing to invest in the defense of your settlement. What are the things that you have? What are the improvements or the building chains that help you improve the settlement? Is it you know, different types of towers, different types of wall? Already talked about sizes, but then what can you put on top of your walls? Do you put hoardings on top of your walls? Do you put bastion artillery on top of your walls? Do you increase the kind of the gate complexity to safeguard? You know, all of these things.
Fantastic. Well then, did I interrupt you?
No.
Well then, that's going to bring us really to the end of everything that we had to show. That was, I think, quite a long stream for what we have here.
Over 15 minutes.
But thank you everyone who's going to go ahead and answer them. Thank you to everyone who streams it, watches us. Even if you don't go on to answer, we really appreciate your thoughts in the chat, and we try and capture them. That's all absolutely fantastic.
Please join the forums.
Yes.
Yes, please join the community. Yes, the Med-Free community, and tell us what you think. Thank you for tuning in, and you know, hopefully we haven't scared you with our work in progress, warts and all. But this is really what we intend to do here, is really kind of lift the veil on how we make a Total War game, show you the entire process from the pre-production and beyond. And be able to point at things and say, yeah, this is broken, this is how we're going to improve it, and then show you that path of improvement as we iterate.
And it was about 3-ish months since the last stream we had.
Yeah, so we're looking to do, you know, we're obviously engaging on the forums, we're responding to key topics, but we're looking to have, you know, roughly quarterly blogs with followed closely by a stream. Different themes. So maybe next time we'll be talking about campaign again, or you know, we ideally like to tie the streams to whatever we're currently working on. So we're literally showing you what the team is currently looking at.
The latest.
Yeah.
Well, you said some of the discussions in chat were discussions you were having literally
Exactly.
this morning, right?
Because we're,
that's
you know,
why we're doing this.
Yeah, this is literally, you know, live development, right? Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Thank you both so much for coming on. Thank you for preparing all the materials, including an entire in-game engine demonstration. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. If you missed any part of it, we've kind of earmarked the different sections. So if you want to hear more about our vision for battles and you've only just tuned in, the VOD will be available straight away. But otherwise, next week we'll be streaming. I think it will just be... It's been a very stressful 2 weeks of streams, so maybe next week it will just be me and Steve playing some Attila. I've been playing around the idea of trying to hold off as the Western.
You still owe me a stream.
I'm
yes.
going to talk to you guys right after the stream, so I have tried to book you in, and I'll see if you're available for that date.
Yep.
But yes, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week, and we'll show you more Medieval 3 in the near future, hopefully.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.